Welcome to this explainer. Every time you order a package online, fill up your gas tank, or even just buy groceries, you're relying on a massive, highly complex system operating out on the open ocean. It's an invisible web of maritime law. But how exactly is it regulated? How do we keep these massive ships safe, the oceans clean, and the crews protected while they move the world's goods?
Okay, let's dive right into this by looking at the sheer scale of our arena. Take the Indian Ocean, for example. We're talking about a massive 68.56 million square kilometers. It's a space stretching roughly 10,000 kilometers from South Africa all the way to Australia. When you're dealing with geography this vast, enforcing any kind of law requires a level of international cooperation that is, frankly, unprecedented.
To explain everything in detail, here's our roadmap today. 1. The strategic Indian Ocean. 2. Titanic's legacy and solace. 3. MARPOL, preventing marine pollution. 4. Technical and operational enforcement. And 5. MLC 2006, seafarers' rights. Let's get to it. Section 1. The strategic Indian Ocean. The Indian Ocean isn't just vast, it's a literal economic powerhouse. This region is home to roughly 2.6 billion people and generates over 10% of global GDP. It provides the absolute shortest shipping paths between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, making it a bustling superhighway for the world's commercial fleets. And this brilliantly illustrates why this region is so heavily regulated. Because of the natural geography, ships are forced to squeeze through narrow, highly congested areas known as choke points. Whether it's the Suez Canal connecting to the Red Sea or the Strait of Hormuz handling critical oil transport, these bottlenecks are incredibly vulnerable to security threats like piracy or even just jurisdictional disputes. We need global rules simply to keep the traffic moving safely. Section 2. Titanic's legacy and solace. You really can't talk about maritime safety without bringing up the RMS Titanic. Tracing the timeline of that disaster reveals a devastating chain of fatal errors. Despite getting multiple ice warnings, they kept pushing forward at full speed. When it finally struck the iceberg, a severe lack of adequate emergency training and a massive shortage of lifeboats led to over 1,500 casualties. The nearby SS Californian even ignored their distress signals. It was a complete systemic failure across the board. So the crucial point here is that this exact tragedy directly birthed SOLAS, the Safety of Life at Sea Convention, in 1914. The international community realized that leaving safety up to individual companies just wasn't going to cut it anymore. SOLAS mandated specific, non-negotiable standards. Ships absolutely had to carry enough lifeboats for everyone on board, conduct mandatory emergency drills, keep a continuous radio watch so signals are never ignored again, and even fund an international ice patrol. A real game changer. Moving on to Section 3, MARPOL, preventing marine pollution. Now, you might think the biggest threat to our oceans is massive, catastrophic oil spills like the Exxon Valdez. Actually, scratch that. It's the everyday stuff. The data shows that a staggering 75% of all vessel oil pollution comes from routine operational discharges. We're talking about standard procedures like taking on ballast water to stabilize the ship or washing out empty cargo tanks. To combat both these operational leaks and the catastrophic spills, MARPOL introduced sweeping technical requirements. The big one was the 1992 amendment mandating double hull designs for oil tankers. Think of a double hull like a ship built inside another ship. If a tanker is in a low-speed collision, that outer hull might breach, but the space between the hulls acts as a buffer zone. It absorbs the impact and protects the inner hull so the oil stays exactly where it belongs. Of course, you can't just snap your fingers and rebuild the entire global fleet overnight. So, breaking down the technical regulations to explain everything in detail, new tankers weighing 600 deadweight tons had to be constructed with double hulls immediately. But for existing ships, they were given strict grace periods of 25 to 30 years to retrofit their structural integrity and get up to code. But what about those everyday operational discharges we were just talking about? For that, crews use a pretty ingenious step-by-step method called the load-on-top procedure. Instead of just flushing oily water into the sea, the mixture is allowed to sit in a tank while the ship is in transit. Because oil floats, they naturally separate. The crew can then carefully draw the clean water out from the bottom, leaving only the concentrated oily residue behind to be disposed of properly at a port facility. Alongside load on top, ships rely on some incredibly smart engineering solutions to prevent mixing in the first place.
They use segregated ballast tanks, which are dedicated entirely to seawater to stabilize the ship. They never hold oil, totally eliminating cross-contamination. Plus, instead of washing empty cargo tanks with water, which just creates a massive polluted mess, they use crude oil washings. They literally use the cargo itself to clean the tanks.
Section 4, Technical and Operational Enforcement. Because let's be honest, all these fantastic engineering rules mean absolutely nothing without strict enforcement. To police the oceans, the industry relies on a rigorous dual system. First, you have flag states. The country where a ship is legally registered has to inspect and certify that vessel every 5 years. But as a vital backup, we have port state control. Any country has the authority to board and inspect a foreign vessel docking at its shores. If they find violations, they can detain the ship, issue heavy fines, or even take legal action. All right, so we've covered the geography of the oceans, the physical safety of the ships, and protecting the environment. But what about the human element? Who protects the people spending months at a time, isolated at sea, working tirelessly to move the world's cargo? That brings us to Section 5, MLC 2006, Seafarers' Rights. The MLC 2006 is essentially a comprehensive global bill of rights for the maritime sector. Before this came along, rules were just a scattered mess across dozens of older documents. The MLC consolidated over 30 earlier conventions into one clear, powerful law. And the best part? It applies to virtually everyone working on a commercial vessel, from the deck cadets and engineers all the way to the hotel service staff and entertainers on cruise ships. To explain everything in detail, this convention is meticulously organized into 5 specific titles. Title 1 sets strict minimum working age of 16 and demands medical fitness certificates. Title 2 mandates legally binding contracts, fair wages, and strict limits on working hours so crews don't get completely exhausted. Title 3 guarantees safe sleeping quarters and nutritious food. Title 4 ensures proper medical care is available, both on board and ashore. And finally, Title 5 outlines the inspection systems needed to enforce the whole shebang. Now, this entire system doesn't just run on autopilot. It is monitored by the special tripartite committee. And the balance of power here is fascinating. Governments, ship owners, and seafarers unions all sit at the exact same table. Each group has equal voting power. This means no single group can dominate the conversation, ensuring that industry issues are solved democratically, carefully balancing business realities with fundamental human rights. Since the maritime industry is always evolving, the MLC was designed to be highly adaptable. If the practical guidelines of the code need updating, say for new tech or a global health crisis, they go through this rigorous 4-step amendment process. A proposal has to achieve majority consensus from all 3 groups in that tripartite committee, then secure a 2/3 majority at the broader International Labor Organization conference. It basically ensures widespread global consensus before any rules change. And this right here brilliantly illustrates the real teeth of the convention, the no more favorable treatment clause. This is absolutely crucial. It means a ship owner can't just register their ship in some country that hasn't signed the MLC just to escape these labor laws. Because when that ship enters the port of a country that has signed it, they are subjected to the exact same rigorous inspections. It completely levels the playing field and forces universal compliance. As we wrap up this explainer, I just want you to remember that 90% of the goods you use every single day rely entirely on this complex, invisible web of maritime law. But the oceans are changing. As climate change opens up new, dangerous routes in the Arctic, and as artificial intelligence starts to automate the very ships we've been talking about, we really have to ask, will this global system of governance remain resilient enough to protect our fragile oceans and the essential seafarers who navigate them? It's a fascinating question to ponder as we look toward the future of global trade. Thanks for joining me.